And I'd like to welcome the elected officials that are here. Mayor Bataan.
Good morning, and what a beautiful morning it is. Our history is shared today with current and future generations because of this ceremony of the Bataan Death March Remembrance. If I can take you back to 1967, when Mr. Vincent B. Barrios and a committee of 10 men, armed with machetes and bolos, cut down trees and cleared the thick undergrowth of brush and shrubbery. The Bremerton City Parks and Recreation Committee, of which Mr. Barrios was a member, made available this 1-acre empty corner lot of Sylvan and Olympus for development of a municipal city park, and the Bataan Park project was underway. Mr. Barrios' men worked tirelessly and spent many hours of volunteer labor. Their cooperation, their efforts, and their dream became a reality on Saturday, April 10th of 1976, with the dedication of ceremonies of this park. At that ceremony, Mayor Glenn Jarstad announced that this was the only municipal park in the nation honoring our brave Filipino and American men and women who fought and died at the Bataan Peninsula in World War II. You'll hear more about their stories from our other speakers. Please allow me to give you a snapshot of Mr. Barrios and what he did for our community. Vince was born September 8, 1905 in Bataan, Aklan, Philippines, and he moved to Bremerton during the 1920s. He passed away at the age of 87 in 1993. And during his time here, he was instrumental in founding the Filipino-American community of Kitsap County in the 1930s. He worked at the Puget Sound Naval Shipyard as a shipwright and was a major part of the first generation of Filipinos in Kitsap County. He was the officer of the Bremerton Along-Spo Sister Cities Committee in 1961, and he received the special recognition from the Philippine Consulate of Seattle. He was appointed to the Asian American Advisory Council by Governor Dan Evans in 1974, and he served on the Advisory Committee for the Equal Employment Opportunity at PSNS. He lived in Bremerton nearly 70 years. There has been a Recognition Day memorial service each year since that first dedication in 1988, the program included 7 Medal of Honor recipients and 2 past national commanders of the American Former Prisoners of War Association. However, I could not find where any city elected official had participated since 1987. I've been so very proud and honored to be a part of this program and the memorial service since I've been your mayor in 2010. And today we have 2 other council members greeting you as well. Last year we learned that the wreath was stolen, and we now have a fresh and long-lasting wreath for years to come. Before I close, I would like to share with you a poem that was written by Beatrice Sanchez, and it was read at the 1978 memorial service. It is called Defenders of Bataan. 3 decades, soon 4, and today it is 70 years or 7 decades. How swiftly the passage of time, lest our hearts grow indifferent and old, and our memories dim. We recall that fateful day when on April 9th, 1942, a bitter scene, surrender. Those courageous Filipino and American men whose sweat, tears, blood, and lives lost. In their agony, defeat. O brave defenders of Bataan, sleep on. Defenders of Bataan, sweet be your rest. The pounding of swells, the fury of the battle hell, is now but of the past. O brave defenders of Bataan, of what of those who lived through the terror, who saw the human suffering, loss, and degradation? Some live today, and only 5, to tell the story that as long as there is tyranny, acts of aggression, and human indignities, there will always be brave defenders of Bataan. For men's quest to freedom and the right to live free from fear is so precious and irreplaceable that we should all hold so dear. O brave defenders of Bataan, 'twas not in vain your life was given. For us, a charge and an undertaking, to keep vigil over the evils of war and men's destruction, to strive for peace, self-respect, and goodwill towards men, to keep the torch of freedom always held high, to never let it fall or die. On this day in Bataan Park, we render honor and pay tribute to the memory of those who have fallen, O brave defenders of Bataan. I'd just also like to draw your attention to a hero's flag. This was dedicated last year during our Armed Forces Day Parade, and it represents all of those heroes that have served and sacrificed in America. As I close, I would just like to thank you for allowing me to participate in this event that preserves our history and honors those brave men and their sacrifices. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to call on Councilwoman Leslie Dobbs.
First of all, thank you for having me here. I am Leslie Dobbs. I'm Bremerton City Council, and this is a true meaning to me as I am a Filipino descent. Like many second-generation Filipinos in Kitsap County, my parents moved here, and I grew up here as a direct result of World War II. Both my parents grew up in the Philippines during World War II. They married and moved to the United States in 1958 when my father proudly joined the U.S. Navy. Growing up here, my parents gave us the best of our heritage and protected us from stories of their childhood that included their homeland being devastated by the horrors of war, that included the Battle of Bataan, occupation, and the Bataan Death March. We grew up with colorfully decorated homes. My father had to hide in caves with his mother and sisters during the occupation. You see, my grandfather was a U.S. Army soldier who retired in the Philippines. Our family connection to Bataan is about as close as it gets. My grandfather, along with many Filipino and American POWs, did not survive that march. After the return of the U.S. forces and following World War II, my father and mother immigrated to the United States when my father joined the Navy. He served proudly in the Korean and Vietnam Wars. I grew up here. I had a wonderful and safe childhood right here in East Bremerton. And my children and grandchildren have lives of freedom and safety as a direct result of those who served and died during those fateful years in the Philippines. My father was there. My grandfather was there. My grandfather died there. I will always honor and remember Bataan. Thank you very much for having me speak to you today.
Now I'd like to call on Councilman Grid Willer.
Well, thank you very much. First, I'd like to start by thanking Mary Dombrowski and then Robert Medley. They they seem to be, and the other members, but they seem to be, that they are who I know that are keeping this event alive. To anybody else that's involved, thank you very much. My wife and I have been attending this ceremony, and we've been doing it quietly. We feel it's important to, as political and community leaders, to honor this event, to honor the memories and the achievements of anybody that survived the Death March and of our Filipino American community. When we were, when I was talking with Mary earlier this week, you know, I felt something I should share with her, and this is our direct link to the Bataan Death March. My wife Sunny, I've always marveled at her high standards. She has a standard of excellence that is hard to match, and I've always wondered where this came from, why this drive or this commitment. And part of it is a military heritage from her family that she keeps. You know, it's quiet and it's humble, but it's not talked about much. Her grandfather was general. At the time, he was brigadier general. I'm sorry, her great-grandfather. Sonny is there correcting me. Her great-grandfather was Brigadier General Albert Monmouth Jones. He was the commanding officer of the 51st Filipino Division. He fought in the Battle of Bataan and ultimately was captured and forced onto the Death March. On this Death March, he was brutally tortured. He survived. But he did serve 3 years in a prisoner of war camp. He came out. It took a while for him to heal, but he continued his Army service, was promoted to Major General, and returned and requested to be returned back to the Philippines, where he finished out a good portion of his career. He loved the Filipino people. He loved the Philippines. He has shared that with his family, and it is carried on. It's really an amazing story, and it was too important to keep to ourselves, and I wanted to share this with you. So thank you on behalf of my wife and I. We appreciate the veterans. We appreciate the cultural diversity of the Filipino American community, and we thank you for your military service. Thank you.
Now I would like to call on Mr. Robert Midley, prisoner of the Far East World War II International Memorial President Foundation.
I want to make sure everybody understands that I was never a prisoner of war. I was about 12 years old when the war started. I wanted to mention how we came to be associated, that is the prisoners of war, World War II International in the Far East, how we became associated with the Filipino American Bataan program. Excuse me, when Dr. Bob Goad, Mary Dombrowski, and I formed the organization, it soon became apparent that we shared some goals with the Filipino American Association in maintaining the history of the Death March and further the prisoners that were captured and wound up in the hell ships, the prison camps, the slave labor camps in Japan and elsewhere in the territory occupied by the Imperial Japanese Army. So we believe that Pablo invited us to share here. And so we soon found we had a mutual goal of preserving this history. It's the actual participants, only 5 left, we've heard today, in this state. We formed a mission of establishing a museum memorial in downtown Bremerton near the ferry terminal. And the purpose is to preserve that history. And one of the ways that we plan to merge the Filipino and the American experience is through education. And Mary Dombrowski has brought 5 copies of Peter Parsons' work that he did. If you remember 2 years ago, Mary showed the film about the Filipino guerrilla activity. And the film was called "No Sir, We Did Not Surrender." And that Mayor Lent was there at that showing. Now, Mary has been in touch with Peter Parsons, and who has produced 5 films, and we're offering to give you the address of Peter Parsons so that you can order these directly if you need them or want them. They're all about the Philippines. They're all about the war, including the held ships. That's an example of the information that we will have available and show when we have the museum, along with the other artifacts that we hope to acquire. The artifacts are fast disappearing because of the death of the people that know what they are, that acquired them. So we believe that the first step would be to find a place where we can store the artifacts and begin to collect them before they're all gone. Before these things are laying around, nobody knows what they are, has any appreciation of them. I have a directory with all of the POW chapters in this country, and when we have a place to store these artifacts, we can begin to collect them. When we have enough, we would seek a way to acquire a building to display them. And I'd like to say these films, and there's many more, visual aids and letters, things that survived the prison camps, which wasn't very many, but we have the stories, the news releases. All of this can be acquired if we have a place to put it. By the way, we're not taking donations, though our flyer is set up that we are. But until we get a place to put them, we will not be taking donations. We'll be taking recommendations or offerings of artifacts that we can make a record of and seek them out whenever the space becomes available. But by the way, I have, speaking of descendants, these POW organizations, many of the original members, of course, have passed away. They had a very hard time in the camps, and they died before their time. But the descendants of these folks have carried it on, these associations. And we would like to be able to form some relationship with those and have them share what they have with us. We call our organization international because when we set out to do this, we could not find a way. I had ordered a whole great file of the POWs, But then it became apparent we had originally just wanted to do the state of Washington. And we found out that that was not easy to separate. And a man named Roger Mansell, who's a POW researcher, well known in his field. He died recently. But his work is still available in Oregon by a man in Oregon that inherited all of his artifacts. We believe we might be able to work with him once we have a place to put them. But I mentioned our descendants. We happen to have a son that was in the Marine Corps from Okinawa, and he stopped in at one of these Marine Expeditionary Units. His ship stopped in at Holding Gaupo, is that the way you pronounce it? And just for a few days, but he met a young woman there, and when he got out of the Corps, he went back. They married, and now they live in Soldotna, Alaska. So we have grandchildren and great-grandchildren that share the bloodline with many of the people in this audience. So I want to again remind you that Graal Bacchus has directed our activities. We've sent him an email with everything that we do, and he should have credit as well for producing this program. Thank you.